Hi, this is Simon. Welcome to my second lesson on standard components. These are items that we can buy from the shop, put on our products that we're making and get a really professional finish. Today I'd like to look more closely into hinges, and I'd like you to get a handle on other items which are available for you. So let's start with the butt hinge, which is a very standard common hinge that are used on boxes and lids and doors. We've got two sides here which we call leaves. These are the ones which stick out. You can see that they've got holes in already for the screws because we're going to hold them on with screws. And we've got the center bit going down here which does all the pivoting, and this is called the knuckle. If you take a closer look, you might see that these holes here are actually countersunk, and that will allow the countersink screws to fit in. But that's not in all cases. Sometimes you need to use raised head screws for these. Let's have a look at a butt hinge in 2D. Here we've got the leaves, two of them, and here we've got the knuckle. If I draw on the lid here, you can see to get this nice and flat with the rest of the box, we've got to inset the hinge leaf into the wood. To do this, we're going to have to chisel out a little bit of the wood to make room for the hinge. Now, at times this can be problematic, and it means sometimes your door or lid doesn't shut properly because you haven't really got this enough wood removed, or you've removed too much wood, so you've got to get it right. And another thing to look out for is that your leaf width here is the same or less than the thickness of your wood. Now, there is a hinge that has been designed to alleviate that problem of cutting away the wood, and this is called a flush hinge, and it sits on top of your surfaces, so all you have to do is screw them together. Another hinge which can be surface mounted is called a butterfly hinge, and I guess you can see why they're called butterfly hinges. And they're supposed to be visible, so when you mount them on the box you'll be able to see them quite clearly. And all you've got to make sure is that you've still got enough room on your lid to fit the hinge in. Now, the next hinge is a really long butt hinge, and we call it a piano hinge, and I wonder if you can guess why. Yes, that's it. It's used on the lid to cover the keyboards on a piano. They come in very long lengths, and you can cut them down. If you select the right knuckle to cut and you wanted a long length, then using a hacksaw you can cut these to the dimensions that you want. Oh, I forgot my little line across my two T's there. This next hinge is quite unusual looking, isn't it? But this is called a concealed cup hinge. And the idea of this is that we use it with flat pack furniture. Although it looks quite complicated to fit, it isn't really, because all you have to do is drill a hole in the piece of wood where you want to attach the hinge. So we get a Forstner bit and we drill a hole like this. And remember, a Forstner bit produces a hole which has got a very flat bottom, and then this cup in the hinge fits into the hole, and we attach it with the two screws. So this is the Forstner bit, and it will produce a nice flat hole, but you don't go all the way through, you stop. So again, your material has to be fairly thick, of around about 18 millimeters to use this one. Now, if you have a really big heavy door or gate or even the lid of a box, then a T-hinge is exactly what you need. And these, as you can see, will be seen outside the surface, and so they can be decorative and they give you that sort of cottage style. So hopefully it's quite clear how this hinge gets its name, because it's in this T shape. Let's move on to other fittings which you might want to use for your product. I mean, my tip here really is about choosing something which is in the style that you want. You know, what style are you trying to get your product to look like? And also, I'd have a look about how you fit the product on. Is it easy to see? So, for example, this handle, we can see here that we're going to use some screws just to attach it onto the product. So that's quite easy to fit. This is a cabinet lock for locking up your boxes. And you can see that it is quite simple to place because you drill a hole through the front of your wood and pass this through. And then these holes here for attaching the screws, there'll be 4 of them. And then in the lid, you cut a little mortise, which is a little square hole for this lock to fit into. The next 3 components I've got for you are catches and latches. And these are obviously for holding your doors and lids shut. The latches tend to be decorative and placed on the outside of your surfaces. And your catches tend to be on the inside and hidden. This is an interesting one here. This is a magnetic one. And my students like to use this because it's got a nice feel to it when you shut the door and it holds it quite nicely. And you can see here that you just need a couple of screws to hold this in place and a couple of screws on the other side for the magnetic catch to work. Let's have a look at drawer slides next because they are really professional and they're very easy to fit as well. You can see that they've got a series of holes here for the screws to go into, and then you attach them on the side of your drawer so that your drawer really does slide out really smoothly and nicely. Well worth looking into. Now, before you actually make your product, check out the length that you're going to be able to get these at, because they run from about 300 to 600 millimeters. And therefore you need to consider the length of this before you start deciding on what size of length of drawer you're going to have. So finally, let's have a look at handles, because there's such a great range of handles out there. And that's really what I'm saying about the style. You know, can you make sure that when you pick a handle, it fits in with the rest of your product? Now these handles are just surface mounted here, so you just get a countersink screw and pop them through the holes. They're that easy to do. Whereas these knobs here that we've got, they are normally fitted in a different method. The knobs have a sort of sticky out bit at the back here, and inside there you will find a screw thread, normally something like an M4 to an M6. And on your piece of wood, you would drill a hole, and then you would pass through a bolt, which they normally provide with the handle. So it comes through and it screws here into the knob and holds it in tight. Now there's one little last component that I forgot to mention, and that is a washer. And this is a device which allows to spread the load that we put on the head of a bolt in across the material. So what you might find is that when you tighten up a nut and bolt, the bolt head can start sort of pressing into the material quite hard. And on brittle and fragile material, a washer is really good at spreading the load around. So that spreads the load. Okay, so that is it. The only other thing I would say is get yourself down to the hardware shop and have a look at all these components that are available to you. See you later.